A former NFL wide receiver ripped Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator Declan Doyle in defense of Lamar Jackson.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here on this bonus edition on Saturday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage twice per day, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time, plus, of course, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern time with our new Locked On Ravens PM. Thanks to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. And on today's show, Chad Johnson ripped into Declan Doyle and got furious over Declan Doyle's comments about OTAs, and particularly Chad Johnson was defending Lamar Jackson. We'll talk about that. Then in the second part of the show, a possible Tyler Linderbaum threat was named, and also we'll dive into some free agency talk for the Ravens. So thank you so much for being here. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's get into this. Chad Johnson, Shannon, Sharpe, they were on the Nightcap, and they were talking about a lot of different things, and Declan Doyle's comments on OTAs got brought up. And Chad Johnson was furious. I've never seen Chad Johnson get this angry. It honestly, like, Chad Johnson was screaming into the microphone so much that, like, the mic started to struggle to pick him up because he was screaming and, like, literally just, like, went off on Declan Doyle for his comments on OTAs. And again, particularly talking about Lamar Jackson. And that's kind of what Chad was talking about, of like these comments calling out Lamar. And Shannon Sharpe mentioned this, and I also want to mention it. In the quote about OTAs, Declan Doyle did not mention Lamar Jackson by name once. He was not singling any particular player out, but Chad Johnson essentially took the comments as calling out Lamar and said, quote, "You calling out your starting franchise quarterback. You don't do nothing like that coming in as a new coach. It's dumb. It's stupid. Why would you piss off your quarterback with a message like that? What sense does that make? If you want Lamar to show up, you text Lamar. I want you." Everything he just said publicly, he could have said that to Lamar if he wants Lamar to show up. What are you proving saying it publicly? Who's it going to piss off? And then Shannon Sharpe was saying, well, he didn't single out anybody. And this literally is like an 8-minute clip almost of Chad Johnson, like, just screaming in defense of Lamar Jackson. And again, like, Lamar, in my opinion, should be there for OTAs this year, right? Like, again, I've been consistent in saying this, where I'm not going to bash anybody when stuff is voluntary, but this, out of all years, is a year that Lamar Jackson needs to show up. And, there have been years Lamar does show up, and, there are years he doesn't. And that just is what it is. I believe he was there for the first year of Todd Monken's system, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was also there for the first year of Greg Roman, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's what I remember. Maybe I'm just not remembering it right. But this is an important year for everybody, not just Lamar to show up, right? That's the thing. That Declan Doyle's message, just to read out the quote again, because I think it's important to mention. Doyle said, quote, "Yes, we would expect the players to be here, and certainly it is voluntary, but if you want to say they're going to win a championship, if you want to say that you have championship standards and those are your goals and your expectations, certainly that's going to take work. That's going to take collaboration. That's going to take the beginning of building their relationship with their coaches and other players starting off this next regime on the right foot. And so that would be those guys getting in here, us being able to work with them hands-on to be able to kind of get this thing going in the direction that we want to. It's about making improvements so that we set ourselves up where when we come back in for training camp, we hit the ground running, and we already have kind of a shared knowledge and shared language, and we're able to go right to work." I don't have a problem with what Declan Doyle said there. I think everything he said is correct, honestly. And I honestly like that mindset where you get that extra head start. And again, is Lamar being there or not being there for OTAs a difference between winning and losing a Super Bowl? Well, maybe not in the like, oh, Lamar's Lamar and he can do what he can do. But the preparation that it does take to win a championship is there. And if we remember the stat that I read out over the course of the show over the last week when those comments were made, actually, it was just a couple of days ago. Feels like forever ago. But honestly, just over the last couple of days, remember the Seahawks had 100% attendance at their OTAs, where every player showed up for at least one of those sessions. That was what the information was that came out. So, again, is Lamar going to be there for every single session of OTAs? I'm not sure, but I think Lamar, again, like Lamar and everybody else, needs to be there for OTAs. And that to me is a huge thing where, yeah, it'd be disappointing if, not just Lamar. I mean, if certain players did skip out on them. And, OTAs are valuable for younger players and getting acclimated and everything. But the difference is this is the first year of a new system for everybody, right? Where you're going to have a little bit of holdover here and a little bit of holdover there. But look, let's face it, the offense is going to look different. The defense is going to look different. I mean, you do have some semblance, I guess, and Anthony Weaver has been in the organization before. Anthony Levine has been with the organization here, is both a player and a coach. So, there's probably more holdover stuff there. But this offense is going to be different. And I think it's important for everybody to show up and make that statement and impact. So again, I don't have a problem with Declan Doyle saying that, yeah, it's going to take work if you have championship standards and those are your goals. You want to be able to start this thing off right and on the right foot. That's all 100% accurate. And the comment, again, was not pointed at Lamar Jackson. I think everybody just kind of took it as, oh, Declan's talking to Lamar, because that's been the big conversation point over the last couple of years is, oh, is Lamar there? Is Lamar not there? Let's talk about Lamar being there or not being there. Again, it's up to Lamar and it's up to every player, whether they want to show up or not to OTAs. And it would be incredible if every single person on that 90-man showed up to OTAs. It'd be great, but we're just going to have to see. But in terms of Chad Johnson, look, I think it's cool he was taken up for Lamar, but there really wasn't anything to take up here for, in my opinion, where if Declan Doyle had called out Lamar Jackson and said, yeah, we really want Lamar to be there, and this is a message to Lamar, you need to be there. Okay, then we'd probably be having a bit of a different conversation. Could that have been said publicly, privately, whatever? But I think it remains the same for everybody, where it's like, yeah, it's important in the first year of a completely brand new coaching staff for everybody to be there. You can name anybody: Lamar, Zay Flowers, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, Nate Wiggins, Ronnie Stanley. I mean, again, every player falls under that umbrella of it's important to have that new system get familiar. You can get familiar with that new system as quickly as possible. So it was pretty wild to kind of hear Chad Johnson go off the way that he did. And, I'm not going to sit here and bash Declan Doyle for those comments. I think what he said was totally reasonable. It was within, he was respectful about it. And he mentioned the fact that, yeah, it is voluntary. He wasn't putting pressure. Oh, if you miss OTAs, you're going to be in trouble. No, I mean, it's voluntary. You can't do that. Once you get to mandatory minicamp, then it's a different conversation. But I do think we're going to see buy-in. I genuinely believe Lamar will be there this offseason for workouts. I believe I have extreme confidence, not at least 95% of the guys will be in the building this offseason. Because I think, again, that's some of the standards that are going to be set here. I think that with John Harbaugh out and Jesse Minter in, like we talked about and heard from Jesse during his press conference, and these coordinators, there are being standards set, and they want those standards to be high, both from the outside and then the standards they're creating from the inside. It's going to reflect that. So this is one of those standards, right? That's something Jesse Minter talked about during his personal introductory press conference, is that he was looking for something like this. Guys that are going to be able to uphold those standards, guys that know their X's and O's, guys that are going to be able to connect with the players. And again, Lamar and Declan have already had conversations. We heard that from Declan. He revealed that he and Lamar talked for over an hour during the interview process, and they've had a couple of other conversations. I personally, and again, I don't know, but I'm going to guess that Lamar, if he did see the comments from Declan Doyle, I don't think he took it as a shot. That would be my assumption. Again, I don't know, but that would be me if I was Lamar, I guess, right? Is I would look at that, and I would look at it as a thing to the whole team, a message, not a shot, not anything that's like, oh, negative attitude from Declan Doyle. He was really saying that in a negative way. I just think he was being real about it. I appreciated that comment from him. And I do think that, again, that's a way to earn some respect. If you're Declan Doyle, be like, hey, this is something we all want, and I'm going to do my best to set those standards for us to be able to accomplish that as best as I can from day one. So, it was interesting definitely to see, because then they started talking about, did Bill Belichick call out Tom Brady and all this stuff? And, the answer to that is yes. But again, there was no calling out about Declan Doyle and Lamar Jackson. So this whole narrative of that, I want to do my best to say that this wasn't directed at Lamar. I think everybody just made it directed at Lamar because that's been the big conversation point everyone's been talking about. So coming up for the second part of the show, we'll dive into a bit of Tyler Linderbaum conversation. There's been a lot of that recently, but a potential Tyler Linderbaum threat has been named by Mina Kimes. She thinks it'd be a great fit for Linderbaum if he did leave the Ravens to go to another AFC team. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year. Whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title, it adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down at the stretch. And now not only can you pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving along, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Saturday bonus edition of the show. Thanks so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're 5 days a week plus more daily Ravens coverage, and we're now twice per day. So the regular show, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time, 30 to 36 minutes, 3 segments, everything's staying the same there. But we're also adding Locked On Ravens PM, which is going to be the evening show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern time, which is going to be about 10 to 16 minutes, 2 segments. And that's just to catch up on the news throughout the day to get more of a instant-ish reaction to that as it happens. And then we'll be able to just do twice a day and have that happen. So really excited for that. And that's on top of everything else we have, like the bonus episodes and instant reactions, the squad show, watch-alongs during the season, as well as the Everydayer Club, which you can get some extra add-on content with that, with weekly Q&As, one-on-one text conversations, ad-free episodes, access to a Discord server, and more. Link to that is in the description below, as well as on the Locked On Ravens page on the Locked On Ravens website. But let's talk Tyler Linderbaum. Yes, I know it's been a topic we've talked about a lot, but, new things keep popping up. And seems like, honestly, and I mentioned this on the evening show, Locked On Ravens PM on Friday, the narrative is almost kind of shifting to me, where it felt like it was almost a guarantee in my mind that the Ravens were going to re-sign Linderbaum. I wasn't super worried about it. I'm like, okay, this is the guy. It makes sense. Center position, something they've been looking for a while. In what world don't they re-sign Linderbaum? But over the last week or so, I think that thought process has honestly begun to shift a little bit to where I'm honestly not sure if they're going to or not. And again, Eric DeCosta's made it clear. He made it clear on the Inner Circle podcast with Aaron Donald that the Ravens strongly want to have Linderbaum back. But at this point, I think that Linderbaum and his agent know that if he hits free agency, this is going to be an all-out battle between multiple different teams throughout the NFL to acquire his services, because a lot of teams would like to have a center like Tyler Linderbaum. And again, he's not a perfect player because nobody is. And as I mentioned on Locked On Ravens PM, there was a stat or stats that were put out by Daniel Rotman, who put together all of the pressure rate percentages for the offensive line at their positions in 2025. So these are ranked by position. And just going down the list, Ronnie Stanley at left tackle was 20th at 6.26%. Andrew Voorhees, left guard, 23rd at 5.46%. That Linderbaum was 31st, though, out of 32 with 4.85%. Falele 25th at 5.61, and Rosengarten 17th, 5.22. But everyone's super concerned about the Linderbaum aspect of that. And looking at the rest of the centers, some free agents like Connor McGovern, he's 8th with 2.36. Mays, Carolina, 2.56. He's 11th. Ethan Pochich from Cleveland, 13th, 2.7. But again, Linderbaum is so elite at so many other different things, right? But there is a little bit of concern about that. Again, that's not something that I would say, the Ravens shouldn't re-sign Linderbaum because of that. But there's context. Plus, there's also the context of who he's playing next to, this, that, and the other. But Mina Kimes and Field Yates, they were having a discussion about Linderbaum and was wondering, and people were talking about it, because I think now one of the more polarizing free agents at this point is Tyler Linderbaum. So she and Field Yates were talking about it over on the Mina Kimes podcast featuring Lenny. And the spot that she named, she called it a crazy idea for Linderbaum. She said, why not the Raiders? And she said, quote, yeah, for rookie QB, you're bringing in a head coach who's going to implement the Kubiak zone blocking scheme. You need a center. If you're the Raiders and you're going to break the bank in one position, why not choose a position that can help your young QB and run game in a way that desperately needs fixing? And so, a lot of people are like, okay, sure, the Raiders have this amount of cap space, and yeah, sure, why not? But remember, we talked about this when Clint Kubiak got hired here on the show, where Clint Kubiak was asked about the stuff that he wants in his team. And this was actually asked by Q, Locked On Raiders Q, who is awesome. He was at the facility talking to Kubiak. And Clint Kubiak, when asked about what are the characteristics on offensive linemen to execute that zone scheme correctly, he said, quote, got to be athletic and can't be so light that he can't pass pro. The most important thing is getting a really bright center that can ID fronts and get everybody on the same page. It all starts with him. So I would identify for the Raiders, both Linderbaum and McGovern is really big options. I think Linderbaum over at Spotrac is projected for 17 and McGovern is projected for 18. I think if Linderbaum goes to the Raiders, McGovern is a pretty clear cut. Hey, why don't the Ravens just plug him in there potentially? But that does depend again. How much money do you want to give to a center? Do you want to try to draft the center? What's your plan there? There's going to be a lot of different conversations if Linderbaum does leave. But to me, you'd be replacing, as I've said, the entire interior of your offensive line with new guys, in my opinion. And you'd have to be sure that the guy you're bringing in is going to be as good, if not better, or even just a step below, if that means you can upgrade at other places, what Linderbaum already brings to the table. So this is honestly pretty polarizing. Again, like the Ravens couldn't use the 5th-year option with him because it would have completely reset the center market by like $5 million. The franchise tag, culmination of all the offensive linemen. So, I mean, that was a no-go for them. And it's a really weird situation where timing, like the decision to decline the 5th-year option was the correct one. But again, my thing was that they had to be able to re-sign him. And if they don't, I will be very curious to see how they end up replacing him, because again, it's not going to be just like the Raiders. I mean, I'm sure John Harbaugh and the Giants will be interested. Maybe Todd Monken is going to want to bring him to Cleveland. There are going to be a bunch of other teams across the league that are going to be trying to get Linderbaum's services. And that's been my whole point over the last couple of weeks, is that if he hits free agency, I'm calling him as good as gone from the Ravens, because this is the time where the Ravens have essentially the exclusive negotiating rights, right? Once that free agency bell hits 0 and teams are able to start talking to guys, Linderbaum's going to be at the top of a lot of teams' lists. And that's what we talked about with Ronnie Stanley last season, where the Ravens did get that deal done. And I thought they got a pretty good deal considering the tackle market and the year Stanley was coming off of. But the difference between Stanley and Linderbaum is the fact that Stanley had already gotten paid, right? He got his $100 million contract. He was able to get that deal. And then he was able to kind of sit back and say, hey, okay, let's kind of do this thing. If he wants to stay in Baltimore, the Ravens have this to offer. Again, I don't know how those negotiations went, but those are all factors. For Linderbaum, this is his first time getting like that big NFL contract. And there's a possibility that he could break, 22, 23, 24 million per season, depending on how big that bidding war gets for him. And again, like I said earlier, I'm sure he and his agent understand that and know that, and potentially do want to take it to free agency. Again, situation is a big factor. Money is a big factor. Familiarity is a big factor. There are a lot of factors here, right? But I don't know. It'd be tough to lose Linderbaum. I'd be pretty disappointed if that were the fact. I think the Ravens could survive without him, right? I'm not saying, losing Linderbaum, your season's over, see you later. But it would definitely be a tough blow. Him and Likely walking out the door at the same time, your top 2 free agents. I mean, that'd be a pretty tough thing to have happen. So I'm hoping that it all works out. I'm hoping that they're able to bring Linderbaum back, and hopefully that happens. But again, for the Ravens, they also have to be smart about it and say, all right, how much money can you commit to a center? Because again, if it starts getting up to like 23, 24, 25, at that point, the Ravens are probably going to say, hey, you know what? It's been great, Tyler. Go get your money. Well-deserved. We're going to move in a different direction. Maybe they can sign a guy for $8 million or $10 million and get a little bit less. What is it? 80% of the production for 20% of the cost, 80-20. So maybe they do that at center, but I just don't want them to cheap out on the O-line again, right? They did that with the guard spots, and they paid Stanley. That was great, but they let Zeitler walk. They let Morgan Moses walk. Like, I don't want them to cheap out on the offensive line. If they let Linderbaum walk, they have to reinvest that money back into the offensive line. at multiple spots, right? You can get your center, you can get your guard. Maybe you draft somebody there. Maybe you spend some of that money on a guy who can rush the passer. But you can't just like throw it all into one secondary member or one pass rusher and just ignore the rest of the O-line, right? You need to be able to put that money that you would lose from Linderbaum or that I guess you gain from Linderbaum back into that unit. So lots of different discussions to be had. And coming up, we'll continue our free agent conversation. We'll move away from Tyler Linderbaum, talk more general Ravens free agency. So stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There's some for everyone. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and I've got my number one pick for the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft. And that for me is cherry, because you got that bold cherry candy style flavor and a really bright, punchy taste. But there's a sleeper pick for me, and that is Confetti Craze, because you have that sweet birthday cake inspired flavor, but you also have a really smooth dessert like taste profile, which I think is absolutely awesome. And 5 Hour Energy shots give you a boost with zero sugar, and 5 Hour Energy has a lot of upcoming flavor innovations planned for me. I'd love to see a starfruit flavor be made, because I grew up with starfruit and I think it's really good. So I think 5 Hour Energy, that'd be something that's really cool. Find your new favorite flavor of 5 Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Saturday bonus edition of the show. Thanks again for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Again, we're now twice per day on the weekdays on Locked On Ravens, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern time. So be sure to tell everybody that we are there for them, just like we're here for you on Locked On Ravens. Also, be sure to follow me on social media, Chaos34, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. All right, let's dive into some free agency talk again. We're going to move away from Tyler Linderbaum. We're not really going to talk as much about Isaiah Likely here, because we've talked a lot about him as well. I think we all have an understanding about what's going to happen with Likely, and the Linderbaum stuff we still have to figure out. But some of these other players, I've done some thinking, and to me, I've kind of established a little bit about who I would want back and not. And, there's always an idea of what's going to happen there. And, this is always subject to change, right? So I think, first of all, when you look at Baltimore's free agent list, again, outside of a guy like Linderbaum, because I'm assuming Likely's gone, there isn't anybody on this list where I'm just like, okay, see, like, they're done if this guy leaves. I think everybody on this list can be replaceable. Funny enough, the guy that I think is the least replaceable on this list, not named Tyler Linderbaum or Isaiah Likely, and maybe Charlie Kohler if you want to throw him in that conversation, is Jordan Stout. I think Jordan Stout, to me, is a guy that the Ravens have finally been able to get the rewards of all the coaching and Jordan Stout being good, where the first couple of years it was, as we've talked about, rough at times for Jordan Stout. And he's really come on these last couple of years, particularly obviously last season. He was incredible. It would be a disaster to lose him. I don't think the Ravens let him walk out of the building. He has established himself as one of the best punters in the league, and could be rewarded as the highest paid punter in the NFL, which again is not some like, oh, he's getting $100 million, but be a pretty significant raise. So I think that Jordan Stout, he's a guy that the Ravens absolutely need to bring back. I've talked a lot, though, and we'll get into it, about players that I want the Ravens to bring back, players that I think are just gone from the Ravens and that I just do not think are going to be back, and guys that honestly I don't necessarily want back on the team. Daniel Falele is obviously going to headline that list, but then you also have a guy like David Ojabo. I just think time has run out for David Ojabo. It's unfortunate. I really liked him in the draft process. There was that whole Pickens versus Ojabo debate, and of course we all know who won that one, but I had higher hopes for Ojabo than he was able to put on the field. I was disappointed there. I was all in on Ojabo when it happened. Again, I would have probably picked Pickens. Just thinking about it, maybe that is some hindsight for me, but even still, like, Pickens was a guy that I loved for the Ravens. A lot of people did. They picked Ojabo. I was high on him, but it didn't work out. I just think maybe a fresh start elsewhere. It's done for Ojabo, in my opinion. Joseph Noteboom, they should not bring back. He was horrendous for the Ravens. They need a better backup tackle. Hopefully Carson Vincent can be that guy for them next season. Ricard, I like Patrick Ricard a lot, but we all know that with Harbaugh out, there are going to be some differences. Jesse Minter coming in, obviously Declan Doyle coming in. Todd Monken did a good job of still utilizing Ricard, but honestly don't think there's a big spot for Ricard in this offense. And I still think he's a good player. And sometimes it's just about fit and positions. And I just think with the Ravens running more wide receiver sets and some of that stuff going on, I don't feel like Ricard has a place on the Ravens anymore. Another guy that I don't really want to see back is Alohi Gilman. I just don't think he was great for the Ravens. He had a couple of really big plays, but it was more so his value was in freeing up Kyle Hamilton. He wasn't a great tackler, caught in the wrong spot sometimes. I feel like I'd much rather have our Darius back than bring Alohi Gilman back. So again, it's nothing against these guys. I just feel like, in my opinion, time is run out on them, and they should have opportunities somewhere else. I think Taven Bryan's another guy. I wouldn't bring him back in. These are all like lower on the totem pole in terms of free agents that the Ravens need to bring back. Another guy I actually think the Ravens do kind of need to bring back is Tyler Huntley. I think Tyler Huntley's a guy. And actually, I don't think I've ever gone. I don't even think on the show. I'm going to look real quick. I don't think I've looked at Cooper Rush and how much money they can save from getting rid of him, because there's no way Cooper Rush is on this team next year. How much money are they going to save with Cooper? It's looking like, let me pull up the cons. We're doing live research over here on this Locked On Ravens bonus episode. Let's see. So they'll save about $500,000. So it's not that much. Yeah, about $500,000. So, but even still, I mean, that's something for a guy that you're never going to play again. It was just a weird signing by Eric DeCosta. That didn't work. They shouldn't have signed Cooper Rush. We all know that. So he's another guy that, not a free agent, but he should not be on this roster. The other guys that could give you a little bit of cap savings is Broderick Washington, who I don't think should be on the roster either. Justice Hill's a bit of a tough one. I mean, Broderick gives you about $4 million. I believe Hill is right around $3 million. So I honestly might keep Justice for the $3 million that he would. Yeah, it's about $3.3-ish million. So I might keep Justice at that number. The big ones are Marlon Humphrey and Roquan Smith. You'd get about $7 million each for June 1st. So yeah, those are the guys that, I mean, honestly, I feel like they're going to keep both. With Marlon, you probably have to look at a position change, maybe a restructure there for Marlon. Roquan, I believe in him. I believe in a lot of these guys under Jesse Minter. I'd like to see like a Marlon and a Roquan for a year under Jesse Minter, and if it doesn't work, you have an out the next year. So I'm cool with that. But yeah, there are a lot of other free agency discussions. Again, guys I would love to see back. Charlie Kohler being one of them, obviously. You also talk about our Darius Washington, who is a guy that, again, like I said, I pick over Gilman. I'd love to see D-Hop back. If you're choosing between D-Hop and Tylen Wallace, I mean, I don't have anything against Tylen. I'd be cool to see Tylen back, but I'd choose D-Hop in that situation. Awuzie, I'd love for them to bring back. He was great for them last season. I'd be cool with Jay Cummel coming back on a minimum if that's the case. Draymond Jones, again, if you're choosing between Kyle Van Noy and Draymond Jones, I'd probably choose Draymond Jones, but I think Jones will get paid a little bit of money this offseason. Van Noy you can probably have for a minimum, but maybe you can take he's projected for about $10.3 million over on SplitTrack. Maybe you take that, invest it into a Trey Hendrickson or, Jalen Phillips or Bradley Chubb or someone along those lines. And, that they kind of call it there. So lots of fun free agent conversations. Obviously, Keaton Mitchell is a restricted free agent. You want to bring him back as well, in my opinion. So lots of fun conversations to be had. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show on the web. Be sure to like and subscribe button in video form and follow along, subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens covers coming up. Maybe a bonus episode tomorrow if there are headlines, but if not, we'll be back here on Monday with a regularly scheduled programming. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.